everybody. I was a bit late on that last change, wasn't I, on the title thing. Sorry about that. My bad. Yeah, I meant to show you all of those covers that I made. But anyway, it's Macro Talk. It's Tuesday. It's something like 8 o'clock in the evening. I think it's the 7th of May. Does that sound right? Sounds awfully late in the year. Feels like it was just winter a couple of days ago. Anyway, today we're talking about the number one reason that people just pack it in and say enough of this macro stuff. I'm going back to portraits or whatever. It's rubbish pictures, and we're going to talk about why pictures can be rubbish, and especially in the field. Well, primarily in the field. I'm not going to get into the technical stuff in the studio, but why our pictures are soft and what we can do about it. I'll walk you through the troubleshooting steps and show you what you need to think about if you're going to get to the bottom of it. Everybody who does macro photography has shots that are soft and rubbish. That's just the nature of the beast. I'll explain to you where they come from and give you a fighting chance of figuring it out before you quit, which is a good thing. This is a Pazoom week. We have a Pazoom meeting on Saturday, and if you don't know what a Pazoom is, it's like a Zoom meeting for Patreon people. That's the P in the Pazoom. We get together every other Saturday for 2 hours, uninterrupted, where we talk about whatever you want to talk about. You bring a problem or a question, or you just bring yourself, and we talk about stuff related to macro photography, equipment, and we talk about rigs, we talk about techniques, all of that, and it's just for the Patreon folks. The reason I do that for them and I don't do it for everybody is because these are the people that pay my salary, and I owe it to them, and I would owe it to you too if you would pay some of my salary. So if you're thinking about it or have ever thought about it, or if the idea of keeping me off food stamps is even remotely appealing to you, go to www.patreon.com/AlanWallsPhotography and get started. They'll tell you everything you need to know. All right, the Optilux Solace video is coming along very nicely. Thank you for asking. It is a little behind schedule, just because of competition mainly. But yeah, I'll get to it. Just stop bugging me about it. I will get to it, I promise. And it's going to surprise you. My conclusions are a bit surprising, even to me. Right, so realistically, this is the last time of the month of May, which is bug month, that you're going to be able to get a request in for something you want to talk about, something specific you want to hear about. Now's your chance. Do it tonight, because I won't get to it if you don't do it tonight. We're about at the last week in my planning, so now's your chance. And come up with something original, unusual, topical. Yeah, that would be fun. I'd like for you to do that. Okay, let me see. There's a question already. For the record. Oh, it's Robert. Yes, it was ascorbic acid in distilled water and ethanol. Well, I hadn't got to that. That's number 4. I was on number 3. We'll get to number 4 now. Number 4, congratulations to the winners of the competition. Todd Becker, Robert Storost, who just mentioned that. And now, who am I forgetting? Dan Stanifer. They're in order. 1, 2, and 3. The top 3 positions. Fantastic photographs. All of the pictures were great this time. They really were so creative. And I really, really loved the top 3. Boy, they were great. Your electrocuted man, Robert, was the best. Absolutely the best. You've got me doing all kinds of creative stuff with crystals now. Anyway. That's where we got to. Thanks again to Lauren and Joseph Walls for helping me with the competition this month. That was very nice of them to come by, and I really enjoyed getting their opinions and their points of view on the pictures. And we were surprisingly close on most of them, so that was good. But anyway, we'll do that again sometime. Let me see. For those of you who don't know this, my website which is a website on the internet that you can get to just by typing into your computer. Every Tuesday or Monday or Sunday, not in that order, every Sunday, Monday or Tuesday, I post an update for the week where I tell you what's going on, what I'm doing, where I'll be, what you can expect to see by way of releases, and if I've released anything, you'll find links to it there. That's once a week. I may do it more often than that, but I always get to it on that beginning of the week to let everybody know what's going on. So go over there and check it out. It's www.AWPhotography.com, and then if you put /blog, it'll take you right to it. If that sounds like too much work, then just go to the Walls app, walls-app.com. And when you go there, there'll be a button, big button, that says website, and you can just click that and it'll take you right there. Okay, so that's where you go if you want to know what's going on, so you won't be surprised. Though I've got it to where we're doing the same thing, I mean, pretty much all the time. It's different, but it's the same days and times, so you shouldn't get too badly lost. All right, that's about everything I had in the way of... then it was the competition results. And I should have warned you before I said that. Spoiler alert. A bit late now. I spoiled it already. Okay. All right. Anybody have a question? Yes, Joseph. Ask Alan if he can enter exploding, burning bugs or lightning struck bugs for May. Oh, if we can enter. No. We don't like bugs to be harmed. Though I harmed a bug last night. I was walking in from the garage last night late, and a spider the size of my palm ran in between my legs and into the kitchen and sat just looking at me. A gigantic thing, a wolf spider. I dispatched it on the spot. Well, I didn't. I was afraid to. I was afraid it would go up my trouser leg. I put a cup over the top of it, and it's been there like that for 2 days. I'm waiting for it to pass out from hunger, and then I'm going to take it outside. I do not like big spiders. Anyway, neither does Joseph, I'm sure. But Joseph wants me to set fire to bugs, and we're not going to be doing that. Okay, so let's talk about these bad photographs. Everybody has more bad photographs than good photographs. It's part of the process of learning macro. You never get to the point where you're not taking bad photographs. In fact, there are some techniques we use in the field that guarantee that you're going to take some bad photographs, because you're sandwiching the good ones in between the bad ones when you're focus stacking and doing some other techniques we'll talk about. But if you're ever going to get beyond just being frustrated that most of your shots are soft or most of your shots lack definition, then you're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to make any sense of it if it's just all thrown into the bucket of soft photographs. So soft is it's like the word pain when you're describing a physical symptom. It's accurate, but it's not very specific or helpful. It doesn't direct us anywhere. So we have to think about the softness we talk about in photographs as coming from different places. Some of it's our technique, some of it's our equipment, some of it's our settings, and you'll see how these kind of fall into a set of groupings that make it easier to think about. If you're going to go about looking at your photographs, you have to do so bravely and honestly. You have to do it with a very open mind and with no preconceived notions. One of the hardest things to do is teach somebody who's been doing photography for a long time. They're taking on macro or field macro as a new thing to try. They want to photograph insects, but they're very talented. They've got a lot of skills. The problem is that sometimes they don't translate very well into field macro, and getting somebody who's been doing photography for 40 years to reconsider how they're doing certain things is a real challenge for a teacher. And it's a real challenge for yourself if you're trying to get to the bottom of what's going on with your pictures. So you need to be ruthless. And when I list the 18 or 9, I think 20, total of 20 causes for bad field photography or bad field photographs, you have to ask yourself in every case as if that is the right answer. You can't just say, well, I get the other ones, but listen, I've been taking pictures for 40 years. I know how to focus the camera, because I'm going to give you a whole bunch of ways that focus can mess you up on your pictures. Understand something else too. The sharpness of a photograph is not what determines how good the photograph is. There are other things in a good photograph besides sharpness. A non-sharp photograph isn't necessarily a bad photograph. It could be a weird photograph, but it won't necessarily be a bad photograph. We focus sometimes at great length on the sharpness of an image, and sometimes that's overlooking a bigger picture issue, maybe composition. There are things that you could do to make the photograph work in other ways. All right. The first thing you have to ask yourself is my picture really bad? And I'll use the word soft because that does kind of encapsulate a lot of it. Is my picture really soft? You would not believe how many times somebody has come to me for lessons because of problems with soft pictures. And I'll have them send me 6 of their worst from the last outing, and we'll look at them together. And the number of times I've looked at pictures and I thought, these look great. These look absolutely fantastic. Did they send me the wrong ones? They sent me their 6 best ones. And it turns out that they tell me, oh, well, you won't see the softness like that. You have to get into 600% at least to see the softness. We don't look at pictures at 600%. You will find softness in every picture. Understand that diffraction, for example, happens at every aperture. If the light is going through a hole, diffraction is going to be an issue and it's going to cause some softening. But you don't see it unless you go looking for it at very highly magnified settings. So we don't worry about it. We have to kind of set a limit to what we're talking about when we say a picture is soft. I think if we can look at a picture at 100% and be satisfied that it is appealingly sharp at 100%, you're fine. There's no point looking at it any higher because there's probably nothing you can do about it at that point. Okay, so if you're going to go about doing this, you first need to identify as much as you can, as well as you can, what is the problem exactly? What does this softness or lack of contrast actually look like? And you can tell, after you've been looking at these for a long time, you can tell oftentimes what the cause of the softness is or what it probably is. But let me make one point here, very, very important point that you listen to carefully. That is, never in the history of photography, in fact, in the history of mankind before photography, has anybody had softness in their images that was caused by one thing. It's never one thing. It's always a combination of things. There may be one main contributing thing, but it is highly unlikely that there is one thing wrong with your photography or with your camera or with your equipment and not a combination of several things. This is just common sense. When there are 20 things that can go wrong and something is going wrong, it's probably not just one of those things. It's going to be a couple of them. So, and some of them do go together. So you have to define the problem, get a good feel for exactly what the issue is. One way you can get a very good feel for whether or not there is a problem, and if so, how big of a problem it is ask somebody who is familiar with photography who does teach field photography, or edits a magazine, or knows something, judges a competition, something like that, and ask them to look at your pictures, your bad ones, and say, what do you think? What do you think's going on? That'll often give you a head start in figuring out and knowing where to go. So recognize then that there are many, many different causes. We're going to go through pretty much all of them that I can think of, and any that you want to add, please do. And then we'll talk about setting up a differential diagnosis, which is a listing in order of likelihood of what's going on with you. And then I'll talk about how you individually go through and eliminate each of these possibilities as something that's causing the problem. Okay? This won't take too long, but because that's the bulk of the preamble to it. The most important thing, though, is assume nothing. Assume that you could be guilty of any of these things, because it's the ones that you're absolutely sure you're not guilty of that you almost certainly will be, in my experience. Anyway, the listing of things that cause softness is really not in an order. I started putting it in an order that kind of put it in different pigeonholes as to what category this kind of softening would fall in. And I had lines going everywhere on this chart that was getting awfully difficult to understand. And I thought, the heck with this. I'll just go through them in the order that they occur to me, which is the order that I see them most. The most common is, of course, that your camera or your subject is moving during the shot. Motion blur. It's very, very common, and it happens to all of us all the time. And it often happens when we know it's going to happen. In other words, we're hand holding the camera, we have a shot at a flying insect, and it's a Hail Mary pass. We take a bunch of shots and hope that one of them catches in focus and without blur. And we seldom hit it, but that's something that we can expect. A much more insidious and dangerous kind of blur or softness in an image is when we have no idea what we're doing. We're taking pictures handheld without paying attention to our settings, maybe, and without paying good attention to the light. And what we're doing is we're guaranteeing every picture is going to be soft, because we aren't even using a shutter speed that will capture the movement of our hands. And we'll talk about that in just a second. So something's moving during the shot. The way to rule that out is to one time go out with your favorite camera and macro lens and take a tripod and a remote and set up a few shots. If you can't find insects that'll stay still, and you need practice to do that, to shoot with a tripod with living insects, but shoot some flowers. Shoot whatever you want, but with a tripod. Don't touch the camera. Use the remote or use a timer, and see what it looks like. If the vast majority of those pictures are tack sharp, and the vast majority of your regular macro pictures are not, you've probably identified the problem right there. And how you go about fixing it doesn't necessarily mean carrying a tripod with you. It can mean looking at various other things that are contributing to it. Like your camera settings, but certainly it gives you an idea of which direction to go in. The second one, your shutter speed is too slow. This is something we get in the habit of doing if we're using program modes, or if we're a bit lazy and we like to use auto ISO so that we're not constantly having to change our settings. Sometimes I will let my shutter speed creep a little on the low side. And when it gets down to about, say about twice your focal length of your lens. If you're shooting with a 105mm lens and you get above about 1/200th of a second, in other words, then you might be verging on territory where you're going to see some movement from your activity of your hands. A lot of us, I know, will push that to 1:1. They'll be using their 90mm lens at what is it, a 50th of a second or something. You can get away with it sometimes if you're braced well, but the odds are your number of soft images will increase. So be aware of the fact that keeping your shutter speed up as high as you can when you have the light that you need will cut back on a lot of the softness. Okay. Your ISO is too high. That is another balancing the three legs of the stool when it comes to exposure. If you let your ISO get up into the tens of thousands, that will create noise, and that amplification of the image will kind of drown out the signal, and that leads to softness. It's very different softness than from other causes, but it definitely will look like a mushy picture. So keep your ISO down. And of course, the solution to both of these problems is to set aside a time to actually test your handheld skills at different shutter speeds and at different ISOs. And you'll see it does make a difference. You're not always going to be able to set your camera settings exactly where you want them. You're going to have to decide what's more important, the exposure or the movement. And sometimes you have to make a difficult decision. Unless you're like me and you always have a flash with you when you're out taking macro pictures. That way you can overcome that problem. Anyway, the next one that is incredibly common is your aperture is too small. The hole in your lens is too tight. When that happens, you get diffraction. And diffraction becomes visible to anybody and visible as softening of the subject at about 20, f20. Above f20, it gets bad quick. And that is a very common cause. You will be not the least bit surprised to hear that a lot of people will buy a macro lens, put it on the camera, read an article about how a smaller aperture gives you a greater depth of field, and they'll set the camera to f32 and leave it there forever, and their pictures remain soft forever, because that's so far into diffraction territory it's hard to get away from. So bear in mind that diffraction occurs with any camera lens combination, but it becomes hurtful to your pictures over 20. If you can keep your f number at 16 or less, preferably 8 or less, you're going to be okay. The next one is the other side of that same coin. Your aperture is too big. You're shooting at f1.4 with a 50mm lens that you borrowed from somebody because you don't have a macro lens, and that's as close as you could get. And you're shooting at f2.8, and you need to recognize that as you get to the very most open settings of the lens, especially when you're dealing with macro subjects, that's when aberrations return to the scene. Every lens that you have has a sweet spot. It has a particular f number that it operates best at, where it has the least amount of distortion from aberration and the least amount of softening from diffraction, right in the middle. And it's usually 5.6 or 8, somewhere around there. If you find out what it is for all of your macro lenses and just leave it there and use other ways to control the light, you'll be a happy camper. So pay attention to your aperture. Your lens is broken. Believe it or not, that absolutely does happen. You'll be taking bad picture after bad picture, and you just won't know what's going on. Eventually, you'll look in the lens and notice a delaminated element. Something will have shifted. Maybe it rattles when you shake it. I've had broken lenses. It's amazingly difficult to diagnose because you don't think about it, or I didn't think about it. And sometimes it's ever so subtle. Sometimes it's just a lens shifts in its mount. One of the glass elements does. You have to really drop a lens for that to happen, but it can happen, and it can result in just perplexing problems. It happened with a telephoto lens that I had. Never could figure out why I couldn't get any sharp bird pictures. Well, I couldn't get sharp anything pictures because it couldn't focus properly. A broken camera. This is a little less common, but I have had this happen as well. It was an older camera, and it was an autofocus related issue, but it was broken. The camera was honest to goodness broken, and I would never have been able to fix it with technique. So if you get to the point of suspecting the camera might be at fault, get it checked out. Have somebody take a look at it. One that pops to mind because of the almost ubiquity of IBIS these days, in-body image stabilization. Cameras now have bodies that provide the same kind of image stabilization that good lenses used to. And in fact, the good lenses still do. There is a problem, though, if you take your camera and because you've been making some blurry pictures, you put it on a tripod and you forget to turn the IBIS off. What happens is it continues, the camera continues to do what it's been trained to do, which is wobble the sensor ever so slightly. By wobbling the sensor, it allows it to overcome and compensate for the wobble in your hands or the wobble in the environment you're shooting in. That's what image stabilization does, is it counteracts the wobble with a wobble of its own. If you then take your Gitzo tripod that cost you $2,000 and mount your camera on it, and it's just rock solid stable, and your IBIS is still on, your pictures are going to be blurry because that thing's going to just be vibrating like crazy looking for something to counteract. Little known fact, but worth paying attention to. Talking about tripods, bad tripods that have spindly legs, cheap tripods, cheap plasticky legs, or the carbon legs that are so dinky they wobble. Sometimes, even in a light breeze, a tripod can be more of a problem than it is of a help. So be mindful of that. If you've got a not stout tripod, maybe get a stouter one or use the ground or something else. Let me see. Weather. A lot of people do not appreciate how little breeze it takes to set up a vibration either in your subject or in you if you're standing there in the weather. But you've been out all day. It was windy earlier. Now it's just breezy. We tend to lose sight of the fact that just breezy is still moving everything, and everything is moving when you're shooting it. You pick too slow a shutter speed, and you're going to pick up motion blur from that. So pay attention to the weather. It doesn't mean don't shoot in the weather. I love to shoot in bad weather. Just compensate for it in your settings and use flash. Other things that will freeze the motion. Your choice of light may be a problem. And that really comes down to choosing natural light when there isn't enough natural light. It causes you to make several other decisions regarding camera settings that almost certainly open you up to getting some motion blur. It also adds to the noise, which is going to further soften the image. Let me see. Choice of lenses. This is a tough one. There are a range of common focal lengths for macro lenses. My macro lenses go from when I had the 25mm, that was the shortest one, but I've got a 40mm lens, a 55, an 85, a 90, a 105, another 105, and a 200. Now, those lenses have different purposes in my mind. The 200 is the sharpest lens I own, and it is a spectacular lens for insect portraits, but you've got to use a tripod with it. You can't handhold it. It just is not stable enough. It's too heavy, it's too long, it's too difficult to get good shots with. It's a tripod lens for me. The 55 is too short for me, and it causes me usually to get way too close to my subject, and I'm usually leaning over or holding my hands out, and all of these things lead to motion blur from me. So there's a reason 105 millimeters is or 100 or the 90 are the popular focal lengths, because they're least likely to result in those kind of problems. And usually the mid-range focal lengths are the ones that are going to have the bigger apertures, the faster lenses. So choosing the right lens is important, and choosing the right lens for your equipment and what you plan to be shooting is what I mean by that. Flash settings. This one's a bit convoluted, but it boils down to trusting your flash when you probably shouldn't be using flash, and using it to go with lower shutter speeds than you could. When you're using flash outdoors, when there's a good bit of ambient light, enough ambient light probably to shoot with, it can lull you into a false sense of security. I mention that because it's come up just a couple of times. The next thing is your index finger, and this is purely a technique thing. Releasing the shutter with your index finger is an art. It is a gentle caress of the button. It is not a stab. You're not trying to get your finger to come out the battery bay at the bottom. But the number of times I'll see people snapping on the thing like they were really trying to hurt their finger will add a huge amount of shake to the whole system. And you're not over the first hit when you're hitting it again. So it is a gentle squeezing of the trigger. It's like pulling the trigger on a gun, I think. I don't know. I was in the army and I was made to shoot a gun, and I wasn't very good at it. In fact, they asked me not to shoot a gun to pass my shooting test from that first one on. So yeah, I don't know if that's the same thing, but certainly caressing the trigger and just ever so softly pressing it is all you need to do. These modern cameras will know what you're trying to do. So no stabbing. Burst mode. Burst mode it's a technique I've talked about, and I've even championed. I may have even recommended it. And it's one I really wish I hadn't recommended, because I used that rather a lot in my early days, because I did get some really nice pictures that way. But in reality, it's not a very productive way of doing it, and it's also not very satisfying. Shooting a burst at high speed is one thing if you're shooting a swallow that's flying by and you really have no option. But you know, when we're shooting a stationary insect, there's no reason probably to shoot in bursts. After the first shot, it's all pretty much whatever is happening in your reaction to the first one, whatever movement's going on. It will get you some possibly sharp shots for sure, and it sometimes will get you shots that you might not have seen to get otherwise. But except in rare circumstances, I don't recommend it. If all of your shooting is done with burst mode and your shots are soft, try without. Try going with just single shot, or at the very best slow burst. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. And of course, I use flash almost all the time, and burst mode and flash are largely incompatible most of the time. Subject behavior. You can't overemphasize this. Insects move. That's part of the deal. If they didn't move, they'd be called trees or something. And if an insect is sitting on a fence post and cleaning his eyes or whatever he's doing, he's going to be moving, and they constantly are moving their feet, and they're hopping around, and they're taking off and landing again. You just have to get good at knowing what your subject's going to do. You anticipate their behavior. For example, the other day I was shooting a dragonfly. It was one of the best pictures I have taken this year. And I was using a 200mm lens on a tripod in the woods. And I just could not get the angle that I wanted. So I would shoot a couple of shots and move. And that was actually what got me thinking about this as a topic to talk about tonight, because I was going to describe that. Well, I will do that. I will describe my shooting technique with a tripod and a long lens like this. The first thing I do is I identify my subject. I spot the subject and I get a prudent distance away. With the 200mm lens, that was about 20 feet. Set up my tripod, set up get the camera roughly pointed at it and locate the subject in the lens. All the time moving very slowly, not making any sudden movements. Get all the camera settings checked real quick, make sure everything's where I want it, and frame my shot. Then I'll fire off a couple of shots right away from right where I am, because sometimes that's all I'll get. The click and the thing's gone. Then, once I've got a couple of shots and I know that they're good or passably good, then I will pick up the tripod and move to my next location, which I've already thought through where I'm going to go next to improve my angle. And I will creep forward 2 or 3 steps, pause, and just let the insect get used to seeing me. They have very short attention spans, and they have very short memories. So he'll see me and think, oh, what's that thing? And then he'll forget all about me if I'm still there. So the idea is move forward, shoot a couple more pictures. Every time you're getting closer, your pictures are getting better. So you bear that in mind and become more and more timid as you go forward. Eventually, if you're careful, you'll get to where you are at the minimum focus distance for your lens, and then you just go to town, because you're going to get some of the best shots of your life when you can do that, when you can get that close. And of course with the 200 you have a lot of reach. You've got about 3 feet that you can be back and get really, really sharp pictures. And that's what I do. But about halfway through, because I was shooting a dragonfly, he left. He just vanished. I took a shot, then I took another shot, and it was just a twig. And what I didn't do was turn around and start looking for him. I stayed exactly where I was, in the position I was in, holding the camera and the lens, and waited for him to come back, which he did promptly within about 30 seconds with a damselfly in his jaws. They are very territorial. They love to use the same perch all day long. So if he flies off, just wait, he'll be back. And I got more pictures. So, and I am going to try to find these as we talk. I ran out of time looking for them, but I put them in the post that you may have seen over on the website. So that would be one place you could see 1 or 2 of them. So that was subject behavior. It's not, you can't stop them from behaving like insects, but you can anticipate their behavior and know when it's safer to shoot them. You know when dragonflies clean their eyeballs with this leg they keep up by their head all the time? When he's doing that, nothing else on his body is moving. If you can get him with his eye cleaner up, that's a good time to shoot them. That was a free extra tip there. All right. This one has to be mentioned because it is so common. Your picture was okay when you brought it into Lightroom. When you finished editing it, it was rubbish. You can edit the good out of a photograph if you're not careful. Be careful with how you're applying various settings. There are a lot of things that you can do that you might not realize that contribute to softness in the image. For example, denoise. When you remove noise from an image, part of the way you're doing that is by removing sharpness. Now, a good denoise AI program will remove the noise and leave a lot of the sharpness alone, but it's using the same technique largely. So be mindful of the fact that there are a lot of things that you might think are cool to add. For example, dehazing a picture. That can soften it as well. Just some of the manipulations you do will have an impact on the image that you're not intending. So know what you're doing when you're messing around in Photoshop. All right, focus. If you are manually focusing, there is a chance that you don't know how to do it. Hate to say that, but that's a possibility. It depends very much on your camera. Are you using blinkies? Blinkies are a double-edged sword. If you're not familiar with them, blinkies are the things that when you're focusing will flash when part of the subject is in focus. So you will focus manually and look for the blinkies, and when you see them, you know you're good. The trouble is the blinkies are distracting and sometimes very bright, and they can block the fact that yes, you are focused near the thing's head, but it's not on its eye, and you can't see that because of the blinkies. So it's good sometimes, and it hurts sometimes. Sometimes the autofocus, if you're using autofocus, will focus on the wrong thing, and you might not know it. In fact, that is one of the reasons that autofocus is not recommended in macro photography, in field macro, is because you will have a tendency to trust the autofocus is thinking what you're thinking, and that it's picking up the same vibe. And no, it's not. It's focusing on the closest thing. So you've got to be mindful of that when you're using autofocus. If you use it at all, use it to get you in the ballpark, and then take control back for the fine focus. And if you use blinkies, set them on the lowest setting so they're not distracting. Some people are unaware of the fact that many cameras, most good cameras, have a diopter control button up on the viewfinder. That is for viewfinders that are being used by people with rubbishy eyes like me. I need to have spectacles to read things close up. I'm fine with distance vision, but when you're using a camera, and I use the eyepiece always, I never use the screen on the back except in the studio, but when I have my eye up to the viewfinder, there is a tiny button on the right hand side of most Nikons, and if you fiddle with that button, it will change the magnification in the eyepiece. It'll literally change it to the same diopter number that your spectacles use, and that's when everything suddenly becomes sharp. You would not believe how many folks don't know that is a control on the camera, and they have been shooting with 2 diopters below average, below par for their eyes, and everything comes out soft because everything is soft because that's where it was shot. Make sure that you can read the numbers on the display through your viewfinder tack sharp with the diopter. Once you get that right, you can trust what you're seeing through the viewfinder. But can you? No, you can't. You can't always trust that the lens is going to see things the way you do. There is a tendency with some lenses, though I'm not familiar of with any macro lenses that have this as a leading problem. But some lenses will focus in front of or behind the subject, while giving you the impression through the viewfinder that you are on the subject. If you are always taking pictures that are defocused in the same direction, either they seem to be focusing short or long, you need to check that lens. And that's easy to do on a table with a tripod and an inclined ruler. You can shoot it and while focused on the number 5, say, and if the ruler's at 45 degrees, that's optimal. And then look at the pictures. Is it sharp at 5 inches? No, it's 4.5 inches that's sharpest, and then it gets soft by 5. Well, you're back focusing. Your lens is focusing beyond where you think it is. You can fix that by telling your camera where to focus the lens. There are ways to deal with that. We won't talk about them here, but just be sure that your lens is doing what you're telling it to do. Something that's much more, in a way, subtle, because if you don't think about it, you just don't think about it. We photograph a lot of things that hang out in trees and bushes, right? That's insect land. So when we're out there and there's a butterfly, beautiful butterfly in the tree, and you're close and you want to get a good shot, you're looking through the lens and you're focused on the butterfly, and you've got the thing's eyes and wings in the same plane and they're sharp. What you can't see is there is a leaf between you and the butterfly. You can't see it because you're focused beyond it, but the camera will see it and the sensor will see it, and it will come out as a soft picture. We do this all the time. I do this all the time. In fact, I randomly picked a file of field macro pictures that I took from sometime last month, and just started going through them and found pretty much one of everything that I'm just describing now. Having a picture where I had a sharp subject with a defocused leaf in front of it, and that obviously isn't going to do. Another picture that I found, I really wish I could be showing these to you. Another picture that I found showed it was a ladybug larva, and they're pretty small, and I was pretty close, but I had depth of field issues, and I didn't want to increase my aperture, and what I ended up with was the tips of the spines on the thing were incredibly sharp, but nothing else was, and that's just bad planning on my part. You can't get the whole of an insect up close at your minimum focus range in focus all the time. And that is probably the biggest skill that you can learn as a macro photographer, is how to selectively focus on what really matters. And that's the take home from this, is you're never going to be able to focus beyond the depth of field that your lens gives you. So you have to choose very wisely where you're going to put that focus, which is why manual focus is the only way to go. But that is very much a skill thing. Let me see, where would I have put these pictures for safekeeping? I'd have put them in a file, probably under pictures, and probably under something like live stream, and with today's date. And that's exactly where they are. So this actually worked out quite well. I'm going to put some of these pictures up. This isn't a picture, this is a user manual for my Leica microscope. How interesting. I don't know how that got there. I'm going to put some pictures up here, as I said. Let me see if I can find OBS first. That will help. Okay, so yeah, I know it's busy. I know. I'm trying to make this get a bit bigger. No, that's the wrong thing. Take my word for it. This is a soft flower. You know why I put this one in here? To show you that I was photographing the flower, but I was focused on the leaf, because that was the mistake. I was actually using the camera focused on the wrong thing. Surprise, surprise, it didn't work out. What else did I find? Honestly, I did this in the last 3 seconds before the thing started. Here's another one. Oh, I think that I see what this is too. Hang on. This is a ladybird. And you can see it's all fuzzy. Why is it fuzzy? Look at that leaf in front of me, the edge of which is all the way out here. The blur from it. Typical kind of stuff. You know, macro, you don't have a lot of time to think. You just have to do. Here's a terrible picture. it was hard for me to find terrible pictures. I had to literally just randomly open any file, and I had all I could eat. This is a terrible picture. It's soft because there's motion, and I didn't have the right focal plane. I didn't get a single shot of this darn thing. I've got one that's even worse. Yeah, this one. Look at that. The focus is on the tips of these spiky things and nothing else. If you're going to take a picture of something like this and you only have a very shallow depth of field, push your aperture down just a little bit, try to get it to f8, maybe 16, and try to get its head where its eyes are. That's the interesting part. And yeah, that's just bad photography right there. And I had lots of opportunities. Let me see, what else did I put? Here's one that shows what I believe is a fairly good photograph that is still blurry. It's blurry in places that don't really matter to me. Where it's not blurry is in its eyes and its face, and it immediately drops off. This is picking a focal plane that allows you to grab a picture that you otherwise just wouldn't be able to do at minimum focus distance on a tiny little nymph like this. But anyway, and don't forget to look at what magnification you're at. I wonder if there is any way for me to find that dragonfly that I took yesterday. Where would I have put that? That could be anywhere. Yeah, I don't think I'll find that. Which is a shame, but yeah, I'm not going to waste time looking for it now. But yeah, it was a beautiful shot, I thought. So there you go. The practice of figuring out what's going on, you have to go into it armed with all of this knowledge of what it could be. And for things that are as simple as a camera setting that you have habitually done, just try changing it. Try going with something less than f32 and see if it makes a difference. And try to only change one variable at a time. There is a tendency to rush these things, and we'll sometimes add a tripod, turn off the IBIS, do whatever, stop drinking 8 cups of coffee before you go out to take pictures in the morning. You do all these things at once and your pictures are great, but you have no idea why. You have no idea what it was you were doing wrong. If you were doing anything wrong, I'm not saying you were, but if you pay attention to all of these things, camera settings, go through your camera settings and know what is turned on and what is turned off. That is the other most common reason for disappointed photographers, is that they have some setting on in their camera that's always been on because they didn't know what it did, so they've just left it on. And what it does is it softens the picture. It can be a preset. It can be any number of things. So look at your settings and understand what the settings are for. Watch a video or two on the best settings for macro photography in the field, and try changing the things that don't look right. Get some help. Ask somebody to look at you shoot, for example. You can learn a lot by watching somebody take a picture. Oftentimes that's it. I mean, you'll nail it right there. Don't be afraid to use the gadgets you've got at home. The remote control clicker, that's fantastic if you're using a tripod. Don't be afraid to use the ground or a tree to rest your camera on. All of these things are old hat. We talk about them all the time. But going through these systematically and making sure that you are optimizing the likelihood of getting a good shot. What is maddening is to do everything right, you think, and still be getting a bad shot because of something you didn't know. So educate yourself as to all the things that can go wrong. Let me see. I'm going to look right back up at the chat here and see if there are any questions or comments or if anybody's added anything. I'm sorry that they weren't very good pictures. I really just grabbed them at random. It's not hard. A whole different subject would be bad pictures in the studio, and we can talk about that after Bug Month. Oh, I think am I back on? Yeah. I did want to show you something. The 19th version of the cross-polarizing device is almost ready to print, and I'll show it to you. I have made so many different drawings of this, but this is, I think, what I'm going to go with finally. It has the lower polarizer is permanently in there because you never need to do anything to that. So I just put that in a slot, and then you've got a slot for a whatchamacallit, a retarder plate or a wave plate. Then your subject goes in this one, and your other polarizer in the top. And it's got this little thingamajig, we'll call it, that holds the discs that sandwich your material. So these can come in and out, and they clip into place like that. Very nice, I thought. And they've got little things on the front so you can grab them and just adjust them from the outside, so you don't have to reach into anything. Yeah, and then the light and everything goes underneath here and plugs in, and that will all be actually built into it. So that's it. I'm excited about it. I think I'll probably get a gold medal at the Tangent show for coming up with something that clever. Or maybe not. Probably not, actually. Let's go and see what people have been saying over the last little bit. Yes, well, to do that, I have to find the saying box. Ah, Jack. WeMacro is listing two new for them objectives, the 5x and 10x M plan, APO, Infinity 14.5mm working distance. Their comparison photos with Mitutoyo look very good. Has anybody tried them? No. I'm confused because neither the M Plan 5 or 10 by Mitutoyo has a working distance of 14.5mm. That is about half the 5 and still 2/3 of the 10. The Mitutoyos have longer working distances. So no, I have not looked at them, and they are infinity corrected objectives, I take it. I was on the WeMacro site 2 days ago purchasing a rail, and I didn't notice that. I'll go look at it, and I'll let you know. If you're thinking of buying one, Jack, wait until I dig around some and find out what it actually is. It's going to be something rebranded, possibly a lot of their stuff's Amscope rebranded. But yeah, let's get to the bottom of it. How much were they? That's the other question. If they were $700, $500 to $700, they're probably real. They might be Mitutoyos too. Larry points out that the F number where diffraction affects the sharpness depends on pixel pitch. Right, it does, but bearing in mind that ballparking it, if you're in double digits, you should start thinking about it, and if you've got anything over 20, you should really be looking for it. But good point. It looks like, oh my goodness, there was a super chat from Patrick, and I didn't notice it. Patrick, good evening, and thank you, sir. You have a question you can ask me, but you've only got 3 minutes to do it in. No, my watch is wonky. You've got 10 minutes. So let me see. Boy, you guys took and turned in some great pictures. We had a blast judging them, my kids and I. They thought they were fantastic. They'd never seen anything like this before, and yeah, they were very impressed. And I am too. I mean, I am really. The more I get into it, the more amazing this little corner of photography is, because you can get really, really weird-looking crystals by mixing things up differently. Has anybody tried seeding your chemical mixture with something to stimulate growth of crystals at a particular point, I started putting little trails of graphite on the slide, and the tiny little pieces of carbon caused the crystals to grow differently. And I've been filming them as they grow, and some of them are just amazing, the way they branch and split and just all kinds of carry on. They make for very interesting videos. One of these days I'll get one made and show it properly. Joseph says, tell Alan they're APO or APOS and DIC. It's not AWPhoto. They're like 200 a piece. Classic 45 millimeter parfocal. Yeah, Mitutoyos are 95 millimeters parfocal. Got it. Okay, so it's yeah. Probably I would not like to say without using them, but I'll still check them out and see. Maybe what I'll do is, if they're reasonably affordable, I'll get one, or I'll get William to lend me one, and I'll try it out, and we'll see what we get. I'm always willing to try it. 14.5 millimeters is a lot of working distance. That is that's more than enough for anything we're likely to be doing. So it might be a good buy, Jack. But if you're looking for a 10x, and you've got $200 burning a hole in your pocket, I could not more highly recommend the Nikon CFI Plan 10x. Is it CFI? Yeah. It's a lovely lens. It has a huge field of view. It works with all the tube lenses that you're likely to come across and give you a full coverage of a full frame camera. It's bright. The picture's bright and sharp. It's a great lens. I love it. And that's $200 from Microscope Central. It is definitely a known character. It does have a shorter working distance. It's about 10.5 millimeters. Pretty short. Let me see. Can you send me the file for the latest polarizer holder? No, that was Amy asking that, because I did that once before and it was rubbish, and I didn't want to waste any more of her filament. Let me finish it, Amy. I'm very, very close. There's a couple of embellishments I need to put on there, and as soon as it's done, I'll send you a copy. And I am going to print a, my printer broke and I fixed it. How's that for ingenious? It was a crimped wire that had broken on the inside, and I found it and fixed it, and now it works. That was very satisfying. So give me a day, Amy, and I'll get it to you. And Bud would like one as well, so everybody wants one. Okay, that's good. I'll send it to you. There's a problem with it, I discovered just this afternoon as I was preparing to print off the innards for it. I realized that the disc for the specimen, which is about the same size as my old ones, about this size. Oh, I did remember something else. A regular microscope slide is too long for it, and the way I've designed it, there's nowhere for the extra length to go. So I was online today trying to find other pieces of glass that I could use. I mean, any piece of glass you could use, but microscope slides might be a slight problem with that. Wave plates, retarders. I discovered, I didn't discover it, somebody told me about it. Oh, it was, let me make sure I get it right. It was Julie Botts told me in a discussion the other day. I was talking about cutting these discs out of various plastics to make wave plates, and I found some that are good and some that are not so good. And she said, you'd be much better off just using a sheet of clear cellophane. Just a clear cellophane sheet. So I thought, well, I'll give it a try. And I have a couple of these discs that are thinner, and I just made a sandwich disc, cellophane disc with a little bit of super glue around it. It is fantastic. It's the best retarder plate of all. It gives the best colors and no distortion or anything from it. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be using in this cross polarizer rig. But I plan to be using mine for a good long time. If you're building one yourself, make sure that you have a flat back on it, because you need to be able to tip it on its side and shoot through it on your macro rig, because you'll want to take good pictures as well as just microscope pictures. Okay, so what did you figure out, Amy? The slide thing, the slide size. I found a place that would actually cut me discs of glass, borosilicate glass, for like $14 a disc. Don't think so. Don't think so. There must be somebody out there who has a glass cutter that will make perfect 50mm discs. I'd buy 100 of them and just keep them in circulation. Anyway, that's it. We're out of time, or close to. And we covered a lot today. You know, when we started out doing these live streams, it was just chit chat the whole time. I had fun. I loved doing it, but we didn't get much work done. And then I think I went in the opposite direction, and it was getting a bit too lectury. I hope that this is more the right kind of balance, but let me know if it's not, because this is my favorite thing to do. And I want it to be meaningful and useful to you. So I don't want to come on here and not give you something to take away that you can use. But also I want it to be fun. So congratulations again to the winners of the competition, to Todd and to Robert and to Dan. But really to everybody who submitted a picture, especially to those of you who have never submitted to a competition, or those of you who have never done this kind of photography, and you're taking a risk in doing that, and I recognize that. And we lightheartedly make a little fun of some of the pictures in the show, in the video, but it's always good-natured, and it's never in a mean or critical way. We love your pictures. I absolutely cannot wait at the end of the month to see what has been turned in. This month is no different. It is a wild card bug month. So that means anything even remotely related to bugs, if I recognize that it's a bug or it's a bug's involved in it, that will be good. Just make sure it's macro, make sure it's your own work, and come up with something thrilling and exciting and different. And I want this to be a really good month, bug month it should be. So you can do a studio shot, a stacked shot, a field shot, anything you want. All right, I think we've covered everything. For those of you who have nothing else better to do, I'm going to go look for that picture while I'm saying goodbye. And if I find it, I'll put it up. But I can't imagine where I'd have put it if it was not in the places I've already looked. So let me see. I have been getting out a little bit more than I have been of late, and it's lovely out there. There's lots to photograph. I think it's going to be a good summer. I'll show you a picture that I took. This was indoors, not outdoors. Hang on. Yeah. It's a butterfly scales. It's not really very good, but it's, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed taking it. I did take some pictures of the Optilux. I don't know if you saw them in the blog post that I did, but for the video, got some nice pictures of the Optilux, and show you that thing in action. That video is going to be good. There's a fair amount to learn from it, I think. I hope. And I can't find the other one, so we're just going to have to forget about it for now. I'll leave you instead with a B. Yeah, how about that? That's a good night, B. Everybody, take care. I hope to see you on Thursday. You will see me Thursday, then again on Saturday. There is no tangent this weekend, but there is a Pazoom. 10 o'clock on Saturday until noon, for those of you who belong to Patreon. I hope everybody has a good beginning of the week, and I will see you again in the middle of the week, 2 o'clock on Thursday afternoon. So until then, stay safe and be well, and I will talk to you then. Thank you again to my bouncers, Amy and Bud and Alistair. Thank you for all you do. I really do appreciate you. And if there are any recommendations for stuff for this month, please let me know, guys, if you've got them written down. All right. See you next time. Take care.